I had known Lily since I was 12. We were inseparable, sleepovers, late, night calls, every heartbreak and triumph shared. Her older brother, Jake, was just Jake, the mysterious, slightly aloof guy who'd pass by in the hallway with half a smile and headphones around his neck. He was 5 years older and completely out of bounds. I thought I barely existed to him. Years passed. I was in a stale relationship, emotionally detached but too afraid to leave. Lily and I stayed close, and through college, I'd see Jake occasionally during holidays. He'd changed, calmer, thoughtful, and engaged in conversation. I noticed how he listened, how his eyes stayed locked on mine a little too long. I convinced myself it was nothing, until that night. Lily had a birthday get-together at their lake house. It was mostly friends from college, some new faces, and Jake. I had too much wine, and my boyfriend didn't come. He'd forgotten again. Jake found me outside by the dock. It was quiet. We talked for over an hour about everything: relationships, dreams, regrets. When I mentioned how lonely I felt in my relationship, something in his eyes changed. It wasn't lust. It was recognition. "I get it," he said. "It's like you're there, but not really there." That night, I kissed him first. We spent the night in his guest room. It wasn't frantic or wild. It was soft, slow, emotional. I cried afterward. He held me. I didn't sleep. The next morning was unbearable. Lily noticed I was off. Jake and I didn't speak. He texted me later, "I'm sorry, but I'm not." I felt the same. I ended things with my boyfriend a week later. I never told Lily. Jake and I didn't see each other again for months. When we finally did, it was different. He was seeing someone new. I felt sick, but could I blame him? We weren't anything real. Just a night of truth we never asked for. To this day, Lily doesn't know. I carry that night like a secret etched into my ribs. Beautiful, selfish, unforgettable. Because sometimes the people you're told to avoid are the ones who understand you the most. And sometimes the line between loyalty and love is heartbreakingly thin. Emotional entanglement often begins in silence, in those moments where nothing is said, but everything shifts. The story of falling for someone off limits, especially a close friend's sibling, highlights how emotional affairs can begin not with intent, but with presence. A glance held a second too long, shared laughter that resonates deeper than it should, subtle attentiveness when others aren't looking. These are the unspoken ingredients of emotional intimacy. What makes such a connection particularly complicated is its slow, burn nature. There's no clear beginning, no defining spark. It unfolds over time, often under the guise of familiarity, safety, or innocent friendship. But that very familiarity can foster comfort, and comfort can give way to vulnerability. When you're emotionally neglected in your current relationship, whether due to lack of attention, communication breakdown, or routine indifference, you begin to seek resonance elsewhere, often unconsciously. That elsewhere can be dangerously close to home. In relationships where the emotional void grows silently, people become more susceptible to seeking out even the smallest gestures of connection. For someone like the protagonist in the story, who is navigating an emotionally distant relationship with her boyfriend, the contrast between neglect and attention becomes stark. Jake, her best friend's older brother, doesn't have to do much. His presence is consistent. He listens, he notices. He doesn't interrupt when she speaks. He remembers things she casually mentions. These small acts start to carry weight, not because they're romantic or grand, but because they represent something absent in her current relationship. The emotional mind doesn't always distinguish between appropriate and inappropriate when it is starved for validation, comfort, and understanding. It simply leans toward warmth. The complication deepens when these emotions are attached to someone deemed forbidden. The idea that someone is off limits actually intensifies the emotional draw. It adds a layer of secrecy, of tension, of anticipation. That line, "my friend's older brother," is not just a social label. It becomes a boundary. And boundaries, when challenged, often become emotionally magnetic. The internal conflict begins to surface. You ask yourself if the attention you're receiving is real, or if you're just projecting what you need onto someone convenient. You wonder if you're betraying your friend, your partner, or yourself. Emotional cheating, unlike physical infidelity, is hard to define. It doesn't always feel wrong. In fact, it can feel more honest than the relationship you're already in because it engages your heart, not just your body. It's important to understand that emotional entanglement is often reciprocal. Jake in this story isn't a passive player. His willingness to engage, to open up, to mirror the same emotional depth reveals a shared vulnerability. Maybe he, too, is navigating his own emotional solitude. Perhaps he's drawn to her for reasons he can't fully articulate. What makes it emotionally intimate is not just the sharing of feelings, but the shared sense of being understood. In that moment by the lake, for instance, it isn't about physical closeness. It's about feeling seen. Emotional intimacy like this is often more dangerous than sex. It binds people at their core. It creates a memory that lasts far longer than a kiss. These kinds of connections carry a heavy emotional price. There's guilt, because you know this shouldn't happen. There's confusion, because it feels so good. There's secrecy, because revealing it would cause irreparable damage to multiple relationships. And perhaps most painfully, there's often no future. Emotional entanglement with someone off limits rarely transitions into a healthy, public relationship. It's stuck in a limbo, too real to forget, too complex to continue. You live in the memory of what it was and the fantasy of what it could have been, knowing that it can never truly exist without hurting others. What's particularly haunting about these emotional affairs is how they expose the vulnerability that exists within seemingly stable lives. You begin to question your values, your choices, and your emotional needs. You realize how fragile commitment is when it's not nurtured, and how quickly loyalty can be challenged when someone finally makes you feel like you're not invisible. The emotional bond that forms in this space is often stronger than any physical affair. It's not about desire, it's about connection. And once you've had even a taste of that kind of emotional closeness, going back to a loveless relationship feels like emotional starvation. The slow and silent way emotional entanglement unfolds makes it far more dangerous than any sudden, reckless fling. It weaves itself into your thoughts, your routines, your values, until you're not just hiding a connection. You're hiding a version of yourself that came alive in someone else's presence. That's what makes stories like this one resonate so deeply. They reveal that infidelity isn't always loud, messy, or impulsive. Sometimes it's quiet, beautiful, and born from a very human need to feel understood. When betrayal happens within a close-knit circle, particularly involving family and lifelong friendships, the damage extends far beyond the two people at the center of it. The ripple effect is emotionally brutal and enduring. In the case of falling for a best friend's older brother, what appears to be a personal, intimate choice carries enormous weight because it affects multiple emotional bonds. The trust between best friends is typically rooted in loyalty, shared history, and mutual protection. When one of those friends crosses an unspoken boundary, like becoming involved, emotionally or physically, with a sibling, it violates that sacred trust. Even if no malice was intended, the betrayal feels deeply personal because it didn't just break a rule, it shattered a code of emotional safety. The emotional fallout of such a betrayal isn't always immediate. Sometimes it simmers quietly as the person who crossed the line struggles with the guilt of what they've done and the secrecy they now carry. Keeping that secret adds another layer of emotional weight. Each conversation with a friend feels tainted, every shared moment shadowed by the lie. And yet, there's also the aching truth that the connection felt real. The person you betrayed your friend with didn't just tempt you with lust, they offered something emotionally fulfilling. That duality is where the deepest torment lies. You are both the villain and the victim in your own story. You betrayed someone, yes, but you also found something meaningful in someone else. That emotional contradiction tears you apart. From the friend's perspective, discovering the betrayal, whether months later or years down the line, is often a gut-wrenching experience. It's not just about who touched whom or when. It's about the erosion of trust. The friend often questions how long it went on, how many times they sat beside their sibling and best friend completely unaware. They replay every moment and every silence. Even if the affair or emotional connection has ended, the betrayal lingers, because the people involved weren't strangers. They were the two people she loved most. One by blood, one by choice, and they both lied. The sibling dynamic is equally complicated. Brothers and sisters don't just share a house. They often share a set of unwritten rules about who is off limits. For a brother to get involved with his sister's best friend, even if sincerely, he's stepping over a line that was likely never formally stated but deeply understood. When that boundary is violated, the relationship between siblings can become strained, sometimes irreparably. There's often the sense that the sibling chose someone else's feelings over their own sister's trust. Even if the relationship between the two was genuine, it came at the cost of loyalty and transparency. In families or friendships where everyone has known each other for years, the betrayal hits on a communal level. Other friends or relatives may take sides. Parents may feel caught in the middle. Every future event, birthdays, holidays, reunions, feels charged with tension. People speak in code, avoid eye contact, or pretend nothing happened while silently grieving the intimacy that once existed. The once safe social space becomes fragmented, and for the person who crossed the line, showing up at gatherings becomes emotionally exhausting. They feel the stares, sense the coldness, and carry the knowledge that one night or one choice redefined their place in that world. The secrecy itself is corrosive. When you're hiding something that powerful, you start to lose pieces of yourself. You become emotionally guarded, hyper-aware of your behavior, careful not to let anything slip. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny, you nod at stories you weren't really part of, and every interaction with the friend you betrayed feels like a performance. The longer the secret lives, the heavier it becomes, until it changes how you see yourself. You're no longer the loyal friend or the caring partner. You're the person who lied, even if no one else knows it yet. What also emerges in these situations is a profound sense of isolation. The emotional connection that once felt electric and validating becomes something you can't speak about. You can't process it out loud without hurting someone else. So you keep it buried, and that buried truth, that shared memory, begins to rot inside you. The sadness isn't just about what was lost. It's about what can never be made right. Some people spend years trying to rebuild those fractured relationships. Others give up entirely, retreating from both the person they hurt and the person they fell for. In these stories, the betrayal is never clean or easy. It is full of emotional contradictions, love and guilt, intimacy and shame, connection and destruction. Everyone involved carries their own pain, and there are no true villains, only people who made choices under emotional pressure, seeking comfort in the wrong places at the wrong time. These betrayals remind us that even love can be selfish, and even the truest feelings can come at an unbearable cost.